G'day from Australia. I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land from which I'm broadcasting. I'd also like to pay my respects to elders past and present. My name is Ashley Davis. Welcome to my coding live stream. Today I'm wrapping up development of my Kanban board extension for Visual Studio Code. It's been a while since I last streamed this project because I've been rather busy. But today I just want to do some finishing up coding tasks on the UI. And I want to show you how I'm going to package and distribute the extension so other people can try it out. Please feel free to reach out to me on Twitter. My Twitter handle is AshleyDavis75. I'm just going to share my screen with you. So just to start with, I just want to show you where you can catch up. This is actually episode 14 of this live stream. It's been going for quite a while now, but you can catch up with it on my YouTube channel. So check out YouTube, The Data Wrangler. That's my YouTube channel. If you go to playlists and where is it? You might have to scroll along a bit. Coding live stream taskboard. That's the playlist, and you can catch up on the first 13 episodes if you want to. Otherwise, today I'm just going to give you a bit of an overview and a review of the project. Talk a little bit about building Visual Studio Code extensions in general, and show you how to publish, or not quite publish, but how to package and distribute an extension. Because I haven't quite got to publishing this yet. My aim is to eventually get the Taskboard extension on the Visual Studio Code marketplace, but I actually just want to release it first. Not on the marketplace. I want to release it on GitHub. And I've actually already done that, but I'm gonna do that again today just to show you how that works. Because I want to take feedback. I want to get people using it, and I want to take feedback before I kind of make it generally available on the marketplace. So please feel free to catch up with the previous live streams if you want on YouTube. You can get the code from my GitHub. If you go to GitHub, Ashley Davis, Taskboard VS Code extension, you can find it here. Please feel free to fork it. I'd love to have other people contribute to this. Once you've forked it, clone the code here. You can grab the link here and do a git clone on it. It's really easy to grab the code and get started. The instructions in the README here are really for people using it. So this README is what's designed to kind of be published on the marketplace eventually. If you want to get into development though, have a look at this development.md file here. Click on that. This gives you the instructions for getting it up and running for development. At the end, there's some resources to some documentation. I'm going to show you some of this documentation in a little while. Oh yeah, the release. So if we just go back to the main page here and we look at releases, I've literally just done a first release just this morning. So 0.0.1 is available on GitHub, and you can download it and you can install it into your own Visual Studio Code if you want to try it out. Now, the reason I've released it already is just because I wanted to try it out and make sure that I could do this before I, do it in the live stream and show you guys how to do it. But you look at the assets here, you can actually download the Vsc file. So this is a thing that you can install in Visual Studio Code and get access to the extension yourself without having to build it from code yourself. That's very exciting. And we're going to put up a new version. We're going to put up a new version today so you can see that process. Now, I haven't really touched this project much in the last 2 months at all, because I've had plenty of other things I've had to do in that time, and also my laptop was sort of broken for a while as well, so I couldn't live stream. I did check that it all worked this morning, so you can see the results of that there, but I'm just going to clear that. So I did check that this all worked this morning just to make sure that it did, and it's cool. But normally what I do when I'm getting back into a new project for the first time in a while is I just run the tests. The first thing to do is run the automated tests and make sure that they'll succeed, just to make sure that I didn't leave it, in a broken state last time. Cool. So I've got 29 passing tests, as you can see here. I just ran the conventional npm test command here, which in the package.json file is set up to run jest. So I've got 2 test files here with 2 test suites basically, and yeah, everything's passing, so that's good. It runs in 3 seconds, or just under 4 seconds actually. So that's always good. Now I'm going to show you what this looks like at the moment, current version of it. So I'm just going to start Visual Studio Code from the project directory. Let me just close all the files here, so we're sort of working with a blank slate. And I'll zoom in a bit, hopefully make it easier for everyone to see. So the first thing is this is all set up to debug the extension using Visual Studio Code. So I've got the this is the code for the extension. I've got the project for the extension open in Visual Studio Code, but I can hit F5 to start debugging it in a new instance of Visual Studio Code. That's what's going to be called the extension host. Now this is all set up in the launch file here. So this is basically what launches it in Visual Studio Code as an extension. Now, if you want to actually know more about what this configuration means, there is information about this in the development markdown file, the one that I just showed you before on GitHub. You can also find it in the project here, development.md. There's a bunch of resources at the end, including 2 links for debugging Visual Studio Code extensions, which were really kind of instrumental in helping me get this set up. So that will explain all of that, hopefully. But anyway, I've got this all set up so that it's on the conventional Visual Studio Code hotkey F5 to debug it. So I'm just hitting F5 now. You can see the little debugging toolbar up here, which I'm going to move over to the side. The first thing it's doing is it's running the sort of the build step that's in my package.json file, which is actually running Webpack. So that's what all that output there is anyway. That's all the Webpack build for the front end, which is basically in a Visual Studio Code extension, it's called a web view. So you can actually embed a web page in a Visual Studio Code tab, and that's called a web view. So anyway, this is starting a new instance of Visual Studio Code. This is the extension host. I've already got a test project open from when I was testing and playing around with this morning, and I've got a markdown file here. But what I can do is bring up the command palette with Control-Shift-P, and I could start typing in Taskboard, but I already had it there anyway. So Open Taskboard is the command. If you'd watched the other live streams, you remember this used to be called Open Kanban Board, but I've renamed it because the project is actually called Taskboard. So Open Taskboard is the command that opens it, and you can see that it's opened it. If I just put it off to the side, I'll just get rid of my side panel there. You can see that it's opened this to-do.markdown file in the Kanban board. So it's a Trello style Kanban board. I didn't write code the UI for this. It is called React Trello. So if you are interested in making your own kind of Trello board type thing, React Trello is pretty cool. Here's the repo here. Just Google React Trello. There's a link. This might be it here. There's a link to all examples. Oh yeah, the storybook. So there's all sorts of examples here you can choose from to see how different ways this can be used. It's really cool. Anyway, so I've wired this all up in my web view. It's communicating with the extension to load the markdown file. Whenever you edit it, it's saving the markdown file. Well, it's saving back to the document. It's not saving the file. I'll show you that. So you can see here the to-do column, and that's the first column. But if I move that here, you can see in the file over here that to-do has now moved to after the in-progress column, which is here. So this has edited my markdown file. It's edited my Kanban board in the markdown file, and you can see it hasn't saved it. So this thing is modified. I can save this now. So that's I just hit Control-S to save that in Visual Studio Code. What that means basically is that you can kind of move these things around, and if you're unhappy with it, you can just hit undo, like in the markdown file. Or if you're using Git, you'd probably be using Git to manage your markdown file or whatever your project is. You can just revert it in Git if you weren't happy with it, with the change that you made in the UI here. So everything you do in the Kanban board editor, in the task board, is undoable, which is kind of cool. Okay, so let's just leave that running just in case I want it again in a moment. Actually, no, I'll just stop that. That's okay. Don't need that again for a little bit. I'm just going to do a bit of an overview of the structure of the project now. Close down a few things we don't need. So this is the extension project. There is a sub-project here for the web view. So this React app subproject is so basically it's the front end, like it's a whole React application basically that is going to be kind of bundled up and included with the extension to display in Visual Studio Code in a tab of its own as part of the extension. So that's what's actually rendering the taskboard, the UI for it. Come back to that in a moment. Now there's a package.json file here. This is for the extension code. So all the extension code lives under the source directory here. So we've got some tests, which I've talked about testing, and I've even coded the tests in live streaming. So if you want to see TDD in action, go back and look at some of the previous episodes. There's only 2 files here. So there's the main code for the extension, which is the bulk of the thing that does the setup. And then there's the converter, which is responsible for converting markdown files to Kanban board data and back again. and I've developed this all in the live streaming. So if you want to see how this code was put together, you know, you got to watch the whole series. But that's the code for the extension. So I just want to distinguish it, because you know that's the code for the extension and that's the code for the front end, and they basically run in separate processes. So you know they're distinct. They're different to each other. Now we've got all the usual stuff. You know, the package file. We're going to be looking at the package file in a little bit more detail in a moment when I explain about packaging this. I've got all my scripts, so you can see here I've got scripts set up to kind of run the Webpack build for the web view. You know, to actually compile the extension code, because the extension, as you can see here, the files are TS files, so they're TypeScript. So the extension is written in TypeScript, and we compile it to JavaScript. You can actually see the compiled JavaScript in the out directory here. Once you've compiled it, you can see the code is all compiled down to something that's almost unreadable here. So let's not look at that. You can see the package that I generated actually. So this is the package here that I built, this Vsc file, and that's what I've released on GitHub this morning. We're going to be creating a version 2 of this and uploading that in a moment. There's a Webpack file here, so that's this is the Webpack configuration for building the front end. I've talked about this in previous live streams, so I'm not really going to go into too much detail on that today. There's configuration for Jest here. What else here that's interesting? Let's have a quick look down in the React app. So this is a whole separate project, so it's got its own package file, and this depends on React. Oh, okay. I got a bit confused. This Webpack config here, it's not for the front end at all. This is actually what I'm using to bundle the TypeScript code into one file. So this is what's actually producing the output file here for the extension. This JavaScript code here. So this is like the top level Webpack configuration that is used to bundle the used to bundle the extension code. I'd forgotten about that because I put this together a couple of months ago and I haven't even looked at it since. So there is another Webpack config down in the React app here. So this is the Webpack config for building the web page, bundling the web page, or the front end for this extension. Both projects are in TypeScript, so they both got their TS config. So this is the TypeScript configuration file, and you can see it again here for the React app. The React app has its own source code directory with an index file, so that's just the root. It's just a normal web page, really. So you can actually test this. There is actually, you'll see it in previous live streams, but I can actually run this start dev command here, npm run start dev, and that'll run the Webpack dev server for the front end. And to make that work, in my TypeScript file here, the index file for the thing, I can actually comment out this line of code here to use test data. So I've baked in some test data that comes from a JSON file. So we're just requiring in a JSON file here. And so eventually I've got to remove that and not actually publish that with the package. But anyway, it's really good for testing in the meantime. So I do want to find a better way of kind of excluding that in the future for the production build. So you can test this standalone if you want to. You can see the JSON file just there in the source directory. That's about it. So there's an index file that includes this index.tsx. When we do the Webpack build, it gets built to this dist directory. So you can see like a HTML file here that's sort of minified, and then the main JS file. Now, for the purposes of the extension, the actual code is like inlined into the HTML file. I don't know if there's any good way to see that because it's such a mess. And it does have a separate JS file here, but you'll see in a moment when I package it, it's only going to include, I think it's only going to include the index.html file, because, I mean, there doesn't seem to be any way with an extension that I've found to have like a front end that has a separate CSS file and a separate JS file. It all has to be packaged into the HTML file. You can see how that's working here, is that it's inlined all the JavaScript into a script tag here. It'd be nicer if you could actually have the JavaScript and the HTML separate, but there just doesn't seem to be any way that I've found anyway to do that with the Visual Studio Code extension. So it's set up a little bit differently. It's set up a little bit differently to a regular web page. All right, I was gonna do some final code changes, but in the interest of time, because we're already running out of time, and I usually like to wrap these up at about 30 or 40 minutes. I'll tell you what I'm going to do with the coding a bit later. I mean, there's a few issues that probably have to be fixed, and I need people to test this so I can find the issues with it and fix them before I go live on the marketplace. But I just wanted to do some sort of tuning up stuff, like, you know, being able to kind of, you know, rather than just having a blank window when you don't have any markdown selected, you know, give you a message to say, you know, give you some instructions on how to select a file. You know, I wanted to be able to put the name of the current file like above the board that you're editing. Just a few little tune-ups like that. But like, I'm just going to skip over that. I'm not going to worry about that today because we're already kind of, you know, almost 17 minutes in, and I need to get this thing bundled and released. So let's just move on, and I'll come back to some of the tuning up later when I'm not live streaming. Okay, let's just clear out all these windows again. So we've got a blank slate. Now I'll show you the docs that I read to learn how to kind of publish, or to at least to bundle this thing. And you know, I'm almost ready to publish it, you know, technically. Okay, so publishing extensions, here we go. So that's one page that's useful. Let me just bring up the other one. So there's a page here for publishing extensions that tells you about the VSC, which is the tool that you use for bundling, and probably for publishing as well. Let's have a look. So I've already installed that, but I'm going to show you just from scratch how to install it in a moment. And there's instructions here for packaging and publishing. I'm going to do the packaging part, then I'm going to do the release on GitHub. I'm not going to publish it today. So there's a bunch of instructions here that you can work through. You know, good documentation is a developer's best friend. And this is pretty good documentation. Like, I found it pretty easy to work through this. There was another page here on bundling extensions. This is how I basically realized that I had to use Webpack to bundle the code for the extension. So I think I could have just packaged it with multiple source files. I've only got 2 source files anyway, that index.ts and converter.ts. So it's not like it's a big application yet. But I went through the process. I went through their instructions here using Webpack and did all the setup. And that's how I ended up with that Webpack configuration that you can find in the root directory of the project. Again, you know, pretty good documentation here on how to get started. I pretty much followed this, and kind of, I don't think I deviated from it too much. So anyway, you can find links to these as well in the project itself. So if we go back to the development README file here, and at the resources section at the end, this is where you can kind of see the links here to bundling and publishing extensions. So if you want to do this for yourself, for your own extension, there's some links there to get you some help for doing that. Now, there is a way to kind of test this without having to build this Vsc file. So you can see that there is some instructions in here. Actually, this is what I'm going to run through, you know, packaging it and installing it in Visual Studio Code to test it. You can actually test it before you build the Vsc file. I mean, obviously you can test it by debugging it, and that starts the extension host and allows you to test it. But the other way to test it is to go to, let me just copy the directory that I've got to go to find this. So I'm going to open up my user profile, .vs code extensions. So you can see where I am here. I can't zoom this, unfortunately. But so under my user directory, .vs code extensions, this is where all the extensions that I'm actually using are installed. And I can literally just copy, like, you can't see the results of where I tested it because I think I've deleted it. But basically, I can just copy all my my extension in here, and then it will be available to use in Visual Studio. So I don't have to build it. I don't have to install it or anything like that. I can literally just copy the files. So you know, that can be a quick way to testing if you don't want to go through the process of packaging it. But I mean, that's what you have to do anyway, right? So ultimately, so that's what I'm going to do right now. Let's go back to my terminal. So the first thing you need to do, and I've already installed this, but I'm going to install it again just to show you, is to install the Vsc package from npm. So this is the command line tool for bundling for Visual Studio Code extensions. I'm saving it as a development dependency here, save dev, because it's not intended to be a production dependency. So let's just wait for this install, and then I will, once it's through, I will check that it's worked, that it's installed. Come on, npm, don't fail me now. I must be taxing my internet a little bit with this this live stream. Here we go. You can do it, npm. Cool. So now I can test by using the version argument here that I've got it installed. So I've got version 1.87.1. Now I can use the help argument to actually get a list of the commands and help. So this is a really good way to find help, you know, for practically any command that, you know, any decent command anyway, will give you some kind of help. You can read through and understand the basic commands. What I want to do, the first thing I want to do is use the ls command. So npx vsc, npx, by the way, if you don't know, that's just something that comes with Node.js, and it allows you to run a locally installed, so a package that's been installed in the local project, it allows you to run that from the current directory. So so you don't have to install this globally. So in the old days, when you were installing this, let me just go back to my install command, you would have had to put like a, if you remember, a -G to install it globally, and then you could just run it. You could just run it like this, vsc whatever you want. But because you want to be able to run, you know, different versions for different projects, you can install it directly in the project the way I've installed it here, and then you run it using npx. So that's basically scoping this command to the locally installed version. Now ls will basically tell me what files are actually going to be packaged, but it's actually going to run npm run VS Code pre-published. So that's like a build step that's in my package.json, and it's going to build it before it actually shows me what's going to be in the bundle. So at the moment, it's basically it's run through its compilation here. This npm run build here. Oh no, so this is where it's kind of building the React app. It's running Webpack. It'll build the extension after this, but while it's doing that, I will just show you the package.json file. Not that one, that's the Webpack configuration. So this is where the VS Code pre-published step is set. So this is where I'm doing a bit of a directory clean there. So cleaning the previous applet directory and then running npm run compile. So I've got this compile step here, which is responsible for building the entire thing, like the front end. Is it? Yeah, so that's what it's doing. So it's building the front end basically before it, you know, as a pre-step to publishing it, and that's why it's called pre-publish, of course. Okay, so that's finished. So it's been through. You can see all the applet here from Webpack, and then it's listed the files. So these are the files that are actually going to be included. Actually, I don't. You can see here that I'm including the JavaScript file that was generated, but I'm not including the TypeScript files. And that's because I've got basically a VS Code ignore file that tells it what to exclude. I've already set that up, but I just noticed that development.md is included, but I don't need to include it. So, you know, things like that, I mean, that's a small file, but things like that kind of bloat out your package, so you don't really want to include them. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add that to my, where is it? The VS Code ignore, so you see that here. So there's already a bunch of stuff in this file already, including everything in the source directory, which is where the TypeScript code lives. And not to mention everything in the React app as well, which is where the source code for the front end of this lives. So I don't want to include any of that. I only want to include, you know, basically the things that are in the output directory, which is, so if we look at the output directory here, the things that are in here are what I want to include, which is the front end, which is all being compiled into HTML, and the actual compiled JavaScript code for the extension itself. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to add my development.md file and just exclude that. So I'm saving that. I'm going to run this npx vsc ls again. Again, it's going to take a few moments. I should really set this up so that it sort of caches the build of the front end, so that I don't have to build it every time. That would make it a bit quicker to kind of run through some of these steps. But given that I don't work on this project very much or very often, I don't actually put a lot of effort into kind of the infrastructure that's required to develop this. Maybe that's something for the future. So it looks like it's finished the Webpack compilation. Oh, yep. So it's given me the list there. So you can see I've got the list of files here that are going to be included in the bundle, but the development.md file has been removed. And I'm pretty sure that's it. You know, I've got an image there that's going to be used as the icon for the Kanban board or for the Taskboard project. I've got the Readme file there, which is needed. So you need the Readme file when you're going to publish. Let's have a quick look at the Readme file, because I did put some effort into kind of rewriting this to make this this Readme file more acceptable to the marketplace. So when you publish an extension on the marketplace, the Readme file sort of becomes, you know, the front page for your extension. So it's got to be geared around that. And I probably still have to kind of update this a bit when I get to the actual point of publishing it. But I have done a once over here to make sure that this Readme is acceptable, really, to, you know, for public display to represent this extension on the marketplace. So the Readme has to be included. There's a bunch of other things in the package.json file that are necessary for publishing. You know, like I'll show you what the documentation that I looked at actually to kind of figure this out. So this is the documentation for the extension manifest. So this shows you everything, all the fields in the package.json that are useful, you know, for when you publish your extension, and what they mean as well. So I'd been through this list. I did this a month or so or more back. I'd been through this list and I'd filled out everything here that needs to be filled out. I'm actually I'll copy a link to this to the Readme file in case you want to find this later. I'll put it at the end of the development Readme. So we'll just call that docs for package.json, which is called the extension manifest, but the rest of us just know it as package.json. So really good stuff here anyway, and I'd been through all of this. It's got an example there of a package.json, and I also looked at an existing project that I really like. So was it the VS Code, Visual Studio Code REST client? So I looked at the REST client. This is a package that I love for making HTTP requests against a REST API directly from within Visual Studio Code. Everything that you see here comes from the README of this project. So and I think this is really good, quite good documentation, because I often have to come back to this doc here to remind myself of how to do particular things in the REST client. So it's pretty good. What I did was I actually went to the repo. So you on the side here, you can see the repo link. Open that, and so this is the repository. This is the actual open source code for that REST client. So it's a great example of a Visual Studio Code extension that you can go and look at and figure out how to do the things you want to do. And you can see that the README file that's just displayed here on the front page. I mean, that's literally what's put on the front page of the extension on the marketplace. So that's why I say, when you're looking at your own README, go back to the README, when you're looking at your own README for your own Visual Studio Code extension, just make sure that it's it's great documentation, because that's a way that you're going to help and hopefully impress the users of your extension. Okay, so we've run the command. We've run the ls command. We've looked at the list of files that are going to be included in the package. Oh, one thing I'm going to do is, before I actually package this, I'm going to, what am I going to do? I need to bump the version number. So I'll do that in the package file. So I'd already published this morning just to test that I could do it. Version 001. Where's the version number? I've lost the version number. Oh, there it is. I just must have not seen it. Anyway, but so this is the version number. It was version 0.0.1. I'm going to change it to 0.2. I'll commit all this later and push it up to GitHub. So now that I've updated my version, so if I look at the local files here, you can see I've got the version 1 of this that I created earlier today. I'm now going to run through the packaging process, and it's going to create this one, but the 0.2 version of that. And I do that using the package command. So this is going to run through the same process as ls. It's doing my pre-publish step here. It's building the front end. It's building the extension code as well. It's going to take a moment, but then I'm going to have the next version of my package file. Now, just to give you an idea of what it means to actually, use that ls command and look at the files that are in there. Like, it allows you to really reduce the size of your package. So the original size of my package was 592 kilobytes. And after I got rid of all the stuff that didn't need to be there, I got it down to 145 kilobytes. So, less than half the size. So that was a really good reason to actually check what's in there, and to fill out that VS Code ignore file to remove the files that I didn't want to include. So this is completed. It says that of where it's packaged it. You can see it's the .2. If I do an ls here now, you can see that I've got that. Now I could just publish this. I could just publish this as a release on GitHub. I'm going to do that in a moment. But first, I want to be able to test this. So I'm going to show you how to install it. First of all, let's look at our directory where we've got the extensions. Oh, that's not it. Where was it? There we go. That's the one I want. So under my user directory, under .vs Code, under extensions, this is where all the extensions for VS Code are installed. Once I install mine, it's gonna appear here. And how do I do that? So I actually use Visual Studio Code itself. So I'm running code from the command line. I'm using the install extension argument. And I'm going to tell it which extension to install. I don't want version 1, I'm testing version 2. So I did a tab completion there just to get the file name in. And it's installing my extension. So I'm just going to close the Visual Studio Codes that I had open there. And I'm just going to open an empty VS Code. Oh, it's opening the last thing I had open anyway. But I'll just open an empty one. Now, if this has worked, I should be able to go into my command palette, which is Control-Shift-P, and I've got Open Taskboard. So it's just there. It's just in Visual Studio Code. I didn't have to run the debugger or anything. I've just got it. Well, let me open the previous project that I was testing with, my temp project. Where was that? Not in my list of recents there. Test project, that was it. So I'm just opening my test project from before, which had the to-do markdown file. And there, it's already there. I'm not debugging it. I literally have installed this extension in Visual Studio Code. It is there to be used in any project. I can test this now. I could run through tests to make sure everything works. I haven't really changed anything today, so I don't really need to retest it. Let's just have a look in the directory and see if it's there. So you can see it here. You can see it's got ashleydavis.taskboard version 0.0.2 has been added. Now, I'm sure there's a command that can uninstall this, but I think you can literally just delete it from here. I'm just literally deleting it from my extensions folder. I'll restart Visual Studio Code, and I shouldn't have access to that anymore unless I've misunderstood how this works. Yeah, so there is no open taskboard anymore. So I've just deleted the directory to remove the extension. It's nice and simple. There is probably like a command like remove or uninstall extension, but deleting it's just as easy. So I didn't worry about that. Okay, it's time to put this on GitHub. Okay, so I've got my version 2. I might just commit my couple of changes here. So I've updated the VS Code ignore file. I updated that to exclude that development markdown file. I've updated the resources in the development markdown file. Updated the resources in the dev doc. And I've bumped the version number. For this release. So I'm just using source tree here. I could use a command line, but it's painful. So I'm going to push those changes up to the repo now, so you can actually see just a simple couple of changes that I've done today. They're up on GitHub right now. What was the next step? Oh yeah, so I'm going to actually go to GitHub and I'm going to publish this new version. So I'm going back to my code repository on GitHub, Ashley Davis, Taskboard VS Code extension. I'll create, let me refresh that, that seems, yeah, so I can create a new release by clicking over here. I'm going to tag it as 0.0.2. It's really cool that it kind of tags it for you. And this is really just a test of, or a demonstration really. I'm just going to put demonstration. I could spell right. Demonstration for live stream. I really need to learn how to spell someday. So what am I doing? Just demonstrating how to do a release for the live stream. And then you've got to add your file, which you can do by drag and drop. So you just find your extension bundle, version 2, just check it's version 2 that I want. Yep, and I'm drag and dropping that onto the release. I'm just going to mark it as a pre-release just to let people know that this is a really kind of early in the life of this extension, and that you probably shouldn't use it for production yet. But I am really keen to get people using this and to take feedback so we can improve it. I'll create a discussion in case anyone wants to talk about it. I think I've got everything here. I've put a label on it. Got my title. I've described it. I've added the actual the package file itself there. And I'll publish it. So you can see it's available here. You can download it. GitHub has already made the zip file just available there, so you can actually download the source code for this this release. It's tagged it as 0.0.2, which you can actually see locally if you pull it. So if I just pull changes now, it's going to actually pull the tag that I've added. So it says new tag. I can actually go and look in this, in the history, in source tree here, and you can see here that it's been tagged, this latest version has been tagged 0.0.2, so I can kind of track where the code was at when it was actually published as a release. Well, that's about it for now. I've shown you, just sort of run through really the structure of the Taskboard Visual Studio Code extension. We've looked at how to debug it, and then how to package it, and how to publish it as a release on GitHub. I do hope to publish this on the Visual Studio Code Marketplace at some point in the future, but I want to put it through some testing and hopefully get some feedback from people. You know, and you know, there's going to be issues in there, so I just want to make sure I fix any issues that are there before it goes live on the marketplace. I'm not planning on doing any more live streams on this project in the near future, so you know, there is more work to be done on it. Obviously, it's you know, any kind of software project I like to say is infinite, so you know, the coding is ongoing, the testing is ongoing, it doesn't stop. But I don't plan to live stream it. My life's got really busy, so it's really hard to fit it in. But if you want to see more live streams, if you want to see me doing more work on this, please let me know. If people ask me to do it, I'll definitely get more motivation to continue. Otherwise, follow me on Twitter, AshleyDavis75 on Twitter, and you can find about updates on the Taskboard extension there, and I'll be tweeting about it and possibly recording another video once I've published it on the Visual Studio Code Marketplace. Thanks so much for listening. Hope you have a great weekend.